Hey there. So today I'm going to talk about data structures because I realized as I was making these videos, I had kind of hand waved my way through data structures and like, yeah, they're matrices, data frames, tables, but let's actually talk a little about them and why, frankly, the tibble even exists. Maybe. No. Okay, so there are three main ways to store data in R. Technically, there are others like vectors, like individual object, but these are the ones that you'll tend to be working with when you are looking at like spreadsheets of data. So the first one is a matrix. That is very, very picky. So it's very fast and efficient. However, it requires all elements to be in the exact same data type. And it gets very, very unhappy frankly, it goes if you do anything even remotely fancy. So they're fast, they're efficient. So if your data are all the same structure, great. However, that's just, unless you're like simulating data, then definitely matrix away, please. It's like disgustingly faster. Otherwise, you typically are going to see data as a data frame. And a data frame is a matrix that allows you to mix various types of variables. So you can have numeric, you can have factors, you can have strings, you can have integer versus whatever the other one is. You can have all of those together in a data frame. Now, there are some challenges with data frames, which is why a tibble even exists. A tibble, you ask. What is that? Essentially, it's a data frame, but crippled. Not crippled. Crippled is a not a good choice. It is restricted. There are no surprises. So a lot of people, and myself included on occasion, argue that tibbles are a better version of a data frame. Here's how the documentation describes them. Data frames are for the lazy and surly. They do less. They don't change your variable names or types, they don't do partial matching, and they complain more. Which, as much as we love when R does stuff for us that we know of and that does what we want it to do, the original data frame does things. It does this less now. But back in the day, back when we walked up the hill to school both ways in the snow, data frames were more troublesome than they are now. So here are kind of the two major advantages, other than they don't make assumptions. They don't do stuff for you. They subset more consistently. So when you use square brackets to subset a tibble, you will always get another tibble. With data frames, it depends on what you're asking for. Sometimes you get a vector, sometimes you get a data frame. I have seen, although I cannot replicate this, so I don't, and it wasn't an R fever dream, where it would give me a matrix. I've never been able to replicate this. I don't know, but it haunted me. Also, they're a little prettier to look at, which, if you weren't raised on base R, like me, it's hard to go back. So compared to base R functions, including those with data frames, try to guess what you want to do. And they're not very good at guessing. So they're programmers mean to be helpful. They really, really do. But a lot of the defaults that are built in, like you'll learn this whenever you have any missing data. For example, the defaults to like calculate a mean and really anything that handles missing data is for it to just freak out if there's any missingness instead of just dropping them, which is fair in a sense because I would rather have it be made known to me and others that you are dropping missing variables or missing missing rows, it's still tedious. So these helpful guesses often lead to unexpected and or frustrating outcomes. And so Tibbles have done away with most of that. Most, not all. So to illustrate, here I've just summoned the tidyverse and I'm making a very simple data frame where A is assigned to a vector of 1 through 5 and B space 2 is assigned to 5 to 1. Now when you print this out, the name B space 2 is now B.2, which you didn't do. R did to help you, which is fair in some ways because you really don't want a space in your names. Don't. It's not. It's a pain. It's a pain, seriously. Don't do it. I tend to, when I get data frames from other data sources, I will regular expression and just suck out all the spaces in the first row, in the variable names. So I don't have to deal with it. Because to summon those non-standard names, you got to put ticks in there, which is annoying. But as we can see here, at least with the Tibble, it gives you what it asks for. So this B space 2 is B space 2 with the ticks. And R is like, you don't want to do that. So, again, I have mixed feelings as a base R girl. So, now Tibbles will complain about bad column names, while data frame will just give you null. It won't tell you what's happened. It just says, while a Tibble will warn you and at least give you a hint of what's going on, which can be helpful so that you know what's happening. It'll give you a warning, which is not an error. Warnings allow your code to still run. Errors is like, do not pass go, do not collect $200, stop the code. So it'll warn you and then give you null. So it'll give you the same output, but it gives you a hint of what's happened in case that is not what you intended. All right. Tibbles also subset consistently. So here I've grabbed the first column. So to specify like what you want to grab, it's row then column. So here I want to grab the first column, but all the rows. And it's giving me a vector. Not super helpful. Because it came from a data frame. And what if I wanted that as a data frame? So when you do that with a Tibble, it'll give you back a Tibble. And it'll essentially give you a data frame. And I will mix these terms all the time. And I'm a little apologetic, but I am not changing my behavior. So a Tibble, it'll give you back a Tibble. Every single time. There are no surprises. No mysteries here. Which is a pretty good thing. This is not a mystery show. Alright. So Tibbles, they don't do partial matching. They just don't do it. So like if you remember that B space, which our data frame made B dot. If you just say, hey B, it'll give it to you for a data frame. It won't give it to you for, even though that's not in the data frame. It'll give it to you because it's like, oh, I think you mean this. Let me help you. Again, help is nice, but I have mixed feelings. Versus a Tibble, it'll be like, what you talking about? And tell you, I don't know where that is. So, again, it doing only what you ask is helpful so that there are no surprises. Also, so Tibbles don't coerce strings as factors. So previously, you recall we made that data frame with letters and whatnot. So the most annoying thing about data frames is that, so if you put in a string, it will just automatically convert it to a factor. Like used to be the default. More on this in a bit. And so you would have to always type in that default string as factors equal false, which people don't do. So then you're stuck with this factor, which is not very helpful, because if you had wanted it to be a factor, you would have made it a factor. So when you, so if you grab it first, so sometimes it's a factor, sometimes it treats it as a character. It's a pain. Tibbles don't do this. So Tibbles will treat everything like the same. What you give it, it will get out. No fanciness. You give it a character, it gives you back a character. It's pretty great. So, sources. The Wonderful Mind, as well as Julia. Their slides have been great, and I've heavily adapted them. And it's super helpful, so that I can spend time on these videos, which are clearly essential to your learning. Wrapping up. Okay, so technically I lied to you. Technically I did lie to you. They did fix this recently. So recently that I wasn't aware when I thought to include this. So I actually cheated, and if you look at the slide code, you'll see that I set the strings as factors to true in this code to illustrate what it used to be. Now it doesn't set that as the default because enough people complained in the fact that the Tibble was born. But it's good to know that fun little historical jaunt. So I'll see you later. Bye.